Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of the Missing Method for Guitar books, and this is Reading the Riff number 5. In this Reading the Riff, we're going to do something a little bit differently. We're going to take a look at Weezer's top 5 guitar riffs, and we're going to count them down. First, before we get started, I got to tell you how much I've loved Weezer over the years. When I first heard their songs in the mid-90s, I was hooked, and I've been hooked ever since. There was something about that Blue album and then Pinkerton that just blew me away. I just loved listening to it over and over again. The guitar tones, the whimsical lyrics. You know, they were a little bit of a comedy act as well as a great rock band. And I shouldn't forget their videos. The videos really helped sell their sound and their whole aesthetic. In fact, I remember being in high school and the biggest banner on my wall in my bedroom had Weezer just plastered right there. And around Weezer, they had the, if it's too loud, we'll turn it down. That was their whole thing. And I thought it was hysterical. I still do. I love Weezer. And so let's get to the top 5 riffs. All right, number 5 on the list, Say It Ain't So, off the Blue album. Now the Blue album came out, of course, in 1994. It was their debut album. They don't call it the Blue album. It's actually self-titled. It's just called Weezer. Of course, their later albums like the Red album, the Green album, the Teal album, they're kind of referred to by their color names. And this is one of the big tracks that became a big hit for them off of that CD. So that's going to be the first riff we look at today in this countdown. The hard thing about this riff is that you have to be good with bar chords, and also you have to be pretty good about reading chord stacks, just meaning seeing the chord on paper note for note rather than just having a chord symbol at the top. So tab really helps out in this case. It really kind of shows you exactly where to put your fingers, where those chords are, and what you need to do to play this. So even though in reading the riff, the whole point is so you take a look at the notation and figure out how to read it, and I'd still encourage you to do that. With this one, it might be easier just to look at the tab and try to use that as a guide. So let's go ahead and get started with Say It Ain't So. So first off, we have the first finger, the index finger, held down across 4 of the strings. And so even though it's on the first string, we're not going to play that first string. On the last string, I have my first finger touching it just to mute it in case I accidentally bump it with the pick. Then what we do is use your middle finger and your ring finger to grab the 5 on the 2nd string 5th fret, and then the 3rd finger grabs the 6th fret of the 4th string, and they come down at the same time. So you play those 4s across the strings and then hammer on with those 2 fingers at the same time. So it sounds like this. And then from there, we keep those fingers in place and play the top 3 strings only. So here's the beginning of Say It Ain't So. And then we have a rest right away, so that's why I stopped the sound. But here we go again. All right, so not too bad. Now the chord shape that forms is a D flat minor 7th chord. And it's a good sound, you know. Then the chord changes to what's essentially A flat major. And it does it on an upbeat. So when you play that, you actually don't want to have the full bar held down like you normally would, which is one of the interesting things about this riff. They actually lift off that first finger, so the first finger's only touching the last string. You have the rest of the bar chord here, and then the 2nd string is open to give it a little bit of a clash. And that's what really draws your ear to it, but doesn't stay there so long that it becomes too dissonant. So we have... All right, one more time. Now after you play that chord with that 2nd string in there, you start with the last string, and that's the and of the beat, of beat 3, and then we go into 16th notes, which are all already under our fingers, so you don't need to move your hand, and we have 4 E and So that same chord is really highlighted with those downstrokes. So here's all of measure 1 of Say It Ain't So. And there you go. All right, let's move on to measure 2. Now for measure 2, we keep that chord shape, we play the 6th fret and slide the whole shape up a half step, even though it's just one note that you're hearing in that slide. So we have, and those are the notes there, and it's counted 1 E and a. And you can hear you've got those middle strings that come in, and then you hit the high strings on the very last part of that beat. So 1 E and a. And that's that part of it. Then from there, once we're in this chord shape, we drop all the way to the E major chord and just strum that E major. Now technically it's really just played on the top 4 strings, but if you accidentally get a couple extra notes in there, it's not a big deal, still sounds good. It's just not quite as precise. And then after you get that chord, the end of that measure, open 6th string, come up to the 9th fret and just kind of bar your finger there. You hammer onto the 11th on that same string, the 5th string, and then you play the 9s on the next 2 strings, which is strings 4 and 3. So here's all of measure 2. You can see there I kind of move my finger over. You don't really need to, it's just something that I've done for years in playing the song. I learned it that way, so I kind of have to keep playing it that way. All right, so here's the whole riff of Say It Ain't So. All right, now what happens in that riff is they repeat that. The only difference is the second time you don't have that stuff. It just lands on that E. So I'm going to play just the second half. Same stuff. All right, and that riff repeats, of course, and then they go into the verse, the chorus, and it's just a lot of fun to play. Let's go ahead and continue on with the countdown. And number 4 on the list is My Name is Jonas from the same album. First track. It's got a great intro, and we're going to check it out here. All right, so I've switched to an acoustic guitar here to play this one. Now, with this riff, there's a couple different ways you can do it. The chords in the left hand are going to be the same, or the fretting hand. But the way you pick it really depends on your personal style. So first, let's go through the chords that you're going to have in My Name is Jonas. The first one is just a simple C major chord. And you can find that chord in Guitar Chord Master Volume 1. You can always look it up there, or anywhere online, of course. The next one is called G6/B. Now, all you're doing here is really putting your second finger on the B note in a G chord. And then the rest of the notes are open. So it's just one finger chord there. So you have C, followed by G6/B. The /B, of course, means that your lowest note is now the B note rather than a G. After that, you go to A minor, and then finish up again with that C6/B. Just like that. Now, of course, in the riff, you're not strumming those chords, but that's where your fingers go as you're playing it. Now, with the other hand, you can either pick it, use your fingers to pick it, or do what I like to do, which is hybrid picking, which I use the pick along with my fingers. And I'm going to show you all 3 ways here. So first, let's just use the pick. So with the pick, I'm going down on the note C, which is that 3rd fret of the 5th string, then up on the 2nd string. That way my pick is ready to come back up to the G that's below it, and then to the E below that. So we have, and it's just easier to think down, up, up, up. All right, so we have down, up, 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 down, up, and then we change chords. So we're going to go down on that strong beat. Down, up, 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 down, up, and then we switch to that second fret, down, up, 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 down, up. And I like to go down on that high E just so I can come back up on the open B after it. Now, one of the unique features of My Name is Jonas is it's in 6/8 time. So it's kind of a unique time signature. So I always thought it was really cool that they started their first album off with a song in 6/8. I mean, it's pretty unusual. All right, so here we go. Just the first measure, and here we go. We move into the next measure. You get the A minor chord, same strings, same picking direction. So you treat it just like you did the C chord in the previous measure. You have down, up, 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 down, up. Then it goes to the G in the same fashion, the G/B. And then after you play that, you start back at the beginning and that just repeats over and over again. So here's the full riff. Again, a little bit slower than the recorded version. And then it continues on. But just to save time, we're going to go ahead and move on to using just your fingers. So I like doing it this way because I feel like I have more control over what I'm doing. So I have thumb, middle, index, and then what I do is I just have the thumb that goes down on that E note on the 4th string. Then I use my middle finger on the 2nd string, and I use the index finger on the 3rd string. So I have switch chords. Then when I get to the 1st string, ring finger, followed by the middle. So on that G6/B, thumb, middle, index, thumb, ring, middle. Then I switch to A minor and I use the same fingering I did on C. Switch to G. So you put that all together. And you've got the intro. Now the way I usually play it is a little bit weird. I've never really seen anybody else play it like this, but you can use your pick and your fingers. The only drawback is you have to kind of jump around a little bit more. So it might not be the most efficient way of doing it. The reason I do it is so I can jump from that riff into the power chords that follow right after. So I don't have to worry about picking a pick up or down or any of that sort of thing. I just go right into it. But for now, here's how I do the hybrid picking. Pick, middle finger, or actually pick, ring, middle, pick, ring, middle. I switch, pick, ring, middle, pick. Then I shift up, so I have ring on the 1st string, middle on the 2nd string. So here we go again. Then for me, I've done it that way so often, you know, I can play a little bit faster. So. And so you can see I can jump right into power chords from there if I want to. So that's why I like doing it that way. All right, we've done 2 riffs so far. Let's move on to the 3rd riff. All right, so for the 3rd riff, I switched back to my electric guitar. And this one comes from the Red album. And it's one of my favorites. Super easy riff to play, super easy riff to read. Pork and Beans from the Red album. So on this one, if you look at the tab that comes with this, in fact, make sure you download that PDF if you haven't already. We have 3rd fret on the last string. So it goes to the 2nd fret after an 8th rest, then to the 4th string, 4th fret, then to the note E, which is the 2nd fret of that same string. And that just repeated over and over again. So you have 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2. All right, so that one's pretty straightforward, really easy to play, really fun to play. So definitely check that one out in the PDF. Now, let's move on to riff number 2, which is one of Weezer's biggest hits, Island in the Sun. Island in the Sun, of course, is off of their Green album, which was their big comeback album. After Pinkerton, there was a lot of negative press on that one. A lot of people didn't like it as well. They were expecting more humor and they got something else. I still like it. I love Pinkerton. But this was their big comeback album, and this is one of the big hits. It's this one and Hash Pipe, of course. So let's take a look at Island in the Sun. Now, as far as reading the riff goes, it's a little bit tricky again because we're reading chords. Now, these chords are all triads, 3-note chords, which are played just on the first 3 strings. So the first chord in the riff is this one here. We're on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, 5th fret of the 2nd string, and the 4th fret of the 3rd string. So you play that one twice, essentially. Downbeat, and then you cut off the second one. The next one is an A minor chord, just comes up here to the 5th fret, and you actually play that on the up and then down again. So you have chord, chord. So it's chord, chord, rest, chord, chord. Then there's another rest, then we come down here to just a regular D chord. The difference is you don't play that 4th string. You have that on the and of 4. And then in the next measure, and 2, come up on the and to what essentially is like an F chord shape, a major F chord, except you don't need the 4th string. So you just have your first finger across these 2 frets, and your second finger is on the 3rd string, 4th fret. That's technically a G chord, the way we're playing it, because F would be back here. You play that on the and of 2, on beat 3, and then once more on beat 4 before a final rest. So altogether, here's number 2 on the list, Island in the Sun. And there you go, which leaves one more riff. The number 1 riff, in my opinion, of all the Weezer riffs. This is also off the Blue album. I may have overloaded on the Blue album, but I love the Blue album. What can I say? And they have great songs, though. The number 1 is Undone, the Sweater Song from the Blue album. Now, I like this one because the opening riff is really fun to play. It kind of sets the mood of the whole song. It was the first Weezer song I ever heard, incidentally. And like I said before, I was just sold on him. So here we go. Let's take a look at the Sweater Song. So first of all, in the PDF, the chord symbols that are on there are kind of simplified versions of those chords. You're not really playing a G, a C, and a D. You're playing more complicated versions. But for the sake of this video, let's just take a look at what we've got. We've got G, so you have the middle finger on the last string, 3rd fret. You have the second finger, which is on the note E, which is technically the 6th of the chord. Then we have an A sharp, which gives it a very unusual sound, followed by the 2nd string open, which is the B. Now that B gives it the sound of G major, just the G and the B together. You can hear that sounds like G major. So here's that first part of the riff. You have last string, and it's got a really cool sound, kind of sets things up. So then we move the middle finger over 1 string for the C, and we keep everything else in place. C, then the same exact notes after that. You can hear they're all there, you know. Then the whole thing shifts up 2 frets. So now your middle finger is on the note D, which is the 5th fret of the 5th string. play the same stuff, and then you come back to C. And then you can put it all together. G, C, D, C, and that's that. That is the #1 riff, in my opinion, of Weezer. They've got tons of other great riffs though. I had to limit it to 5 just so this video wouldn't get crazy long. But other ones I considered, of course, Hash Pipe that I mentioned earlier. That's a great song, great guitar riff. We have Surf Wax America from the Blue Album. We have Dope Noise from Maladroit. We have Buddy Holly, of course. I love Buddy Holly. And of course, Pink Triangle from Pinkerton. There's a lot of others off of that. Actually, there's a lot of others off all of them. All right. Well, what did you think of this list? I'm sure nobody's going to completely agree with me, and that's great because there's so many great Weezer songs out there. So in the comments, I say make your own list of your favorite 5 to 10 Weezer riffs. Make sure you download that PDF if you haven't already. Learn how to play all these. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. So I always appreciate it when people do that. And finally, if you get a chance, come over to our website, themissingmethod.com. You'll find out about all our books. And you can even sign up to get yourself a free book, a free ebook. So enjoy the tunes and keep practicing.